Thank you for listening to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast, available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and Stitcher. Also, please follow Matt's Movie Reviews on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Reddit, Instagram, and MeWe. And of course, be sure to visit mattsmoviereviews.net for the latest reviews, top 10 lists, and more. Now, on to the show.
All right, I'm here with the eyewitness of the Saskatchewan Sasquatch. I mean, his description was thorough.
It had beaten the lies that were evil.
Looks like the second half of the Creature double feature arrived.
It's the last video for a while. Hit a wall with our Demon of Detroit Lakes piece. And you know, I'm just kind of sifting through my own existential crisis at the moment.
You need to keep hunting for these things. They need something to believe in. You need to just keep searching for your truth. It's great stuff.
Where'd this come from?
I don't know, I just got it mailed to me. There's no name or return address on the package. I'm gonna give that guy a call, see what we can find.
Doug Greywood.
He just got the greatest gift. Stay vigilant, my cryptozoids. We go out there, we see what we can find, and we do a little filming.
Seems off to me.
We're cryptozoologists. We should want things to be off.
Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. Doug Greywood, you must be the guy with the video? I'm very excited about this whole chupacabra situation. Never had anything that exciting on here before.
It's time to get famous.
To fear the unknown, now we simply fear being unknown.
Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I am your host, Matthew Pejkovic, and this is episode number 462. Releasing September 16 on digital is Greywood's Plot, a pitch-black comedy horror that tells the story of a pair of amateur cryptozoologists who investigate the sighting of a cryptid on a plot of land owned by an eccentric recluse. A labor of love shot in black and white, Greywood's Plot is a creature feature that delightfully messes with convention and defies expectation. And joining me now are the filmmakers of Greywood's Plot, Josh Stifter and Daniel Degnan. Josh and Daniel, I thank you both very much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man.
Thank you.
So it's really interesting doing my research into this. And, you know, Greywood's Plot, Josh, really is a movie that in many ways is something of a bucket list item for you. You're about to turn 30. You said to yourself, before you turn 30, you want to make a feature film. You found yourself at 31, you hadn't made that feature film yet. And it's something that I can relate to. There's so many things on my list as well in the work that I do that I haven't done. I'm like, oh shit, better get my stuff in the gear and get it done, right?
Yeah.
So when you hit that age of 31 and you're like, there's this feature film I want to do, what was Greywood's Plot at that point? Was that an idea? Was that anything at all? Or is this something that really kind of came to mind at that point in your life and something that you really kind of wrote out? From what I understand, you use kind of like cards, right? To write down notes.
Yeah.
So you like do script writing, essentially. Your script comes a little later.
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of the cards because, like, the reality is every moment that the audience sees on screen, every scene should have a reason to exist. So when I break it down onto the cards and I'm just like, the simplest form, what is this scene? Why does it exist? That's how it all comes to me. And so I started on those. The story about me turning 31, and you did your research. I love that because that is, you got to tell the thing that I've had to say 300 times now over the past multiple years. But I really started when I was 30. Like, those note cards started when I hit 30 and went like, dude, you're in your 30s and you have a family, you have a mortgage, you have a career, like, but you had one thing you wanted to do. Why didn't you do that? When that realization hit on my 30th birthday, that's when I got to work really. And it wasn't until my 31st birthday that I could actually take 6 days off with my friends and convince them to go out into the woods and film a movie. It really started around then, and I did the note cards, and we had a scriptment. We had sort of an idea But the idea was actually birthed long before that. I always wanted to make a movie where Daniel is a mad scientist. I just think that's such a fun concept to make your best friend into like one of the coolest human monsters they can be, like Dr. Frankenstein, Dr. Moreau, like these creeps. And when I started coming up with this concept, it sort of kind of came together. But then that first time we filmed, we just sort of improv'd everything. And then the script actually came after that. We went and filmed this movie, The Good Exorcist, with Robert Rodriguez's show, Rebel Without a Crew. And then it wasn't until we finished that I went like, you know what? I finished the bucket list thing. I made the feature because of the show, but if I don't make Greywood's plot, it's just going to be such a regret because I've lived with this idea in my head now for years. And at that point, we were 3 years later, and I was like, I got to make this thing, or 2 years later, and I was like, I got to make this thing. And we pulled it together.
Daniel, in regards to those 6 days, that initial shooting of Greywood's plot, like the phase 1, I guess you could call it, what was that like? Because, Josh just said before, improvisational. Was it more kind of like an experimental thing, kind of feeling things out? And you do have a guide in regards to the cards, but when it came to dialogue, when it came to, that kind of like plot lines, etc., is that a thing where you guys are feeling things out over the 6 days and just seeing where the kind of like the story goes? And is that like the last kind of like what the end product was, kind of like more of a experimental feature as opposed to like a more traditional structure kind of thing?
Yeah. So, excuse me. Those first 6 days were chaotic. We had a lot of fun. We made sure to actually celebrate his birthday as well. So there was some drinking and some hanging out. But it was definitely an experimental approach. We initially thought this was going to be more of like a mumblecore type horror film, with some comedy and some scares mixed into it. And we came back with the footage, and it wasn't really, we probably had like solid 30 minutes of usable work. And in that time, we found out too, we were shooting in color, and Josh started editing, and he sent me some footage, and he's like, if we turn this footage over to black and white, it has this very old school Universal Monsters, like 50s B movie vibe to it. And that sort of, sent us on this totally different trajectory. And as Josh had mentioned, we sort of shelved Greywoods for a while. And then we got this opportunity to make a whole nother feature film. And that one we wrote a full script for, and we stuck to it pretty well. And we kind of realized, if we're going to go back to Greywoods, we should probably write this thing down. So we did come back to it. We wrote a full script. We bounced ideas. We did a couple drafts. And so the finished product is much more polished, much more fine-tuned. We still improv, and we still, got to play around with things, but we had a much clearer vision and sense of what this story was after some time away from it.
Josh, it's really interesting. So you mentioned before you did the Rebel Without a Crew show with Robert Rodriguez, and from that came The Good Exorcist. And then you go back to Greywood's plot. What do you learn from that experience with Good Exorcist and Rebel Without a Crew that you take back to this, your first kind of love, your first kind of like movie? Because to me, what it kind of sounds like to me? It sounds like you made a demo tape, you toured that tape around, and when you're playing it live, this doesn't really work and that doesn't really work, but I think if we do this, we do that, it might work a little better. Is there kind of like comparisons kind of similar to filmmaking?
Yeah, big time. I mean, I think it is very much like we made our first EP that we were really proud of and we tossed out there, but we were like, we got to tell this story that's like way more important, that we're not going to have reality TV getting in the way. When we wrote The Good Exorcist, we weren't ignorant. We knew that we were going to be on a reality show, and we wrote scenes that maybe were more nonsensical, or we made the movie a little sillier because we were like, if we're going to be on reality TV, let's have fun. Let's make this like a dad vacation, dad camp filmmaking. And if we don't make a movie, it's not going to be the end of the world. We at least had fun. With Greywood's plot, we were like, no, let's make the movie. Like, we'll have fun, but this is our story that we really want to tell and we're really passionate about. And, some of the fun things that I took away were watching The Good Exorcist with an audience and seeing like what we can get away with as filmmakers, like not over explaining things, not, storytelling things that ignorantly I would have done differently. I learned from, and I used audience reactions big time when I was going into it, thinking more about what the audience would want, but at the same time realizing like at some point we're going to end up having producers attached to our projects, and we're going to have to answer to certain things, and people are going to say, you can't do a killer hobo animation midway through your movie. Like, we're not going to be able to do that for forever. So one of the things I took away going into this was, let's just do whatever we want. Like, let's really make this our imaginations on the screen, and no one's going to tell us no except for each other.
Daniel, when it comes to the occupation, to use a very kind of loose term of these characters, the whole kind of cryptozoologist kind of thing, or the amateur cryptozoologist thing, I try to really get into listening like to those kind of podcasts and watching the reality shows. I just can't, my bullshit meter kind of goes up and I can't really get into it. When it came to having your characters be part of that whole kind of movement, was that something that was always there from the initial early phase one kind of part of Greywood's plot, or is that something that comes along later? And what was it about that occupation in particular, or that calling in particular, that really spoke or really fit with these characters, do you think?
Yeah, that was definitely something early on. It was kind of part of like the plot device to get our characters to the location. I mean, that was one reason for it. But also to speak to what you said too, I think there is there's some desperation to this character, and I think he's kind of going through a crisis as well. Like, is this bullshit? Is this all make sense? Is this worth exploring? Is what I'm doing, having any sort of impact? And so we kind of found those themes as we were going along, and it just, it made perfect sense for this guy to be, this sort of paranormal blogger that just is having this existential crisis of what, does any of this make sense? Is what I'm doing, meaningful? And so we kind of just kept pushing that throughout. And then, like I said, it got our character to the location for, the rest of the horror of the film to ensue. So, yeah.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you love. The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon. The world's leading online store, Amazon is your first stop to buy a wide range of products at competitive prices with fast delivery times. Amazon is also a world-class entertainment hub that includes Prime Video, Audible, Twitch, Amazon Music, and more. Sign up with Amazon today and experience the best in online shopping and entertainment. Josh, it's really interesting what Daniel just said then about Dom in his existential crisis. And I think a lot of it comes from the lonely life of the YouTuber. I think a lot of times, like, when people think YouTuber, they'll say, I don't know, the Paul Brothers or Mr. Beast and stuff. These guys have millions and millions of stuff. That's great and all, but underneath the surface of that, it's like thousands and millions of people who just put in content up all the time, waiting for some type of validation in regards to comments or, I don't know, likes or what have you, right? And they don't get it. And the anxiety that comes from that can be quite immeasurable. Like, I do YouTube stuff myself, but that's only a part of what I do. I do this as well, and I write and such. People who go in like full tilt and they quit their jobs and do this stuff, and then that's all they got. And they try to get the validity from strangers to kind of like, prop them up and such. I think it's a really kind of dangerous kind of thing. I think that's really where Dom finds himself too. Like, not to give away too much, but at the start of the film, he's not in a good place mentally whatsoever. And I think a lot of that comes from years and years and years of people just giving him downvotes on his content. And the content is what he is. And I think it's a really kind of interesting thing they kind of tapped into there.
Yeah, speaking to the last question, that was a big reason why I went with the cryptozoologist, because when I was like a kid, you would watch Unsolved Mysteries, you would watch even watching X-Files, you're like, man, this stuff could exist. And we live in an age where everyone is just so happy to tell you you're an idiot. So someone who works in a field like that, you would be the ultimate idiot if you can't actually show anything, if you can't prove it. And he's sort of like more digging into the history of stuff and like really interested in where these ideas come from. And I think he's trying really, really hard. He's got a 6-part series on the something Banshee, whatever it is, the Michigan Banshee or whatever it is. And I was just like, that guy loves it so much, and to be just torn apart by people who don't really care, aren't really ready to tear, or aren't really having a conversation. They just want to be smarter than the idiot that made this video. He's starting to realize he's the idiot. He's the laughingstock. And for me, there is a personal element of that where like, Dan and I were in a band for a long time thinking we were going to be rock stars, and having 4 people show up to concerts. You're just like, oh my God, why am I doing this? Or even I think a lot of this came from making Rebel Without a Crew and making a movie for $7,000 in 14 days with a reality crew following us around. And it was the biggest challenge you could put yourself under to make a feature film. And the amount of people who came out of the woodwork to tell us we did it wrong, we're just like, oh, okay. Like, I want to see you guys do it. It's hard.
Exactly.
It's super hard. And so I think there was a personal element in that. I obviously upped it to the extreme, but I sort of wanted to show that feeling that we get as artists in the modern era when we're competing with so much content and everyone being able to connect, and everyone's waiting to be smarter than everyone else all the time.
Daniel, I wanted to talk about your performance as Mr. Greywood, and something really interesting that I heard you say in the interview was that part of your approach to the character is that you didn't want to blink during your performance. And it's really interesting because I don't know if you knew this, but Anthony Hopkins said the key to his Hannibal Lecter was he didn't want to blink. Like if someone's just looking at you,
sure,
and they're not blinking, you're like, what the fuck's going on with this guy?
Yeah,
right? And I think what's going on with Greywood is exactly the same thing. That whole non-blinking thing. Did you pick up those cues from like people like Anthony Hopkins and talk about their own monsters, or is that something where you thought to yourself, if I was talking to a person and they weren't blinking while looking at me, that would be a really, really efficient but simple way to unnerve a lot of people, whether it be your fellow cast members or the audience watching?
Yeah, I mean, a little of both. I mean, I feel like definitely I've heard that Anthony Hopkins anecdote at some point, and subconsciously, I'm sure I just ripped from that. But I also have very poor vision, so I don't wear contacts. So every time we were filming, I could see nothing. So I would just mess with Josh and Keith on set, and anytime I'm just staring at them, I know I'm looking at a blob and I know it's them, but they, it's not unnerving for me because I can't see anything, and they're just like, dude, you're creeping us out, you got to cut it out.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, let's just keep doing that. I'll just keep staring at you because I could do this all day. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Daniel does this thing when he takes his glasses off where he tries to see things, so his eyes get really big. And I remember the first time he did it, I was like, it's that first scene when Dom and Miles first meet Doug, and he's walks up to them kind of oddly and then starts a conversation. You first hear that Minnesota accent, and his eyes were so big. I'm like, okay, Daniel, if you're going to not wear the glasses, you have to do this face through the whole movie. And he just leaned into it.
Well, it's nothing like hearing about a majestic moose with eyes that big, right?
right.
Exactly. And then it would be even better because he'd we'd have to do the lines, and he'd want to read the script, and I'd see him pick the script up and try to get it to the right spot. And I'm just like, man, you made this so much harder on yourself than you needed to, but it works.
It works. It definitely does work. It's something that really I picked up on when watching it. Josh, is really interesting. Yourself and Daniel, you've known each other since you're 5 years old. Is that correct?
Yeah, kindergarten. I think Daniel was 5, I was 6.
And you were both making little films back then. Was it your parents' video camera that you had, and you kind of grabbed it, and you were making little adventure films, short films, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I made them before we met. I think that was sort of the impetus to Daniel, Keith, and I to make these movies. Keith's parents had one of those big video cameras that had the big arm thing, and you had a VHS pack attached. They had the whole deal. And that was the first time Keith and I had his mom film us, and we did some stuff with that before Daniel was around, I believe. But then, it was around the time that Daniel and I started hanging out that my dad bought a VHS camera, the smaller, not high 8, but the smaller cassettes that you put inside of a VHS. And his parents bought one too, and we would just try to grab them from our parents whenever we were hanging out. We were like, Dad, can we use the camera? And if my dad would say no, I'd find a way to sneak it like later in the afternoon when he, went to go watch TV or something. I'd be like, you can go watch Tool Time, Tim Allen's show, whatever the hell it was called, and Home Improvement. And Daniel and I will go film some crazy little schlocky movie with water with our squirt guns. But yeah, we did that forever till we were in high school. We were filming little short films all the way up to high school. And then in high school, Daniel and I went to a private high school and where we were like in dorms and whatnot. And we would take any excuse to use a video camera. I ended up buying a video camera or getting my dad's old camera, and we would shoot videos for classes. I would run around the dorm filming everyone and turn that into like a fun little like spoof documentary or whatever. So we've always been into it. But it's sort of evolved into us trying to find stories that we want to tell as friends and like push each other and write scripts that kind of shock each other. And that's sort of where it all came from.
And snippets of those kind of like those movies that you made when you were younger, is that what's showing up in the movie? Because I was watching it and I was like, that looks very real. That doesn't look like something that was made for different. That looks like something that was home video. So that's you guys actually doing your thing and you just kind of put it in the movie.
Yeah. So there's that scene where Dom and Miles are driving to the land and you can see it in those things. And originally I'd written like 4 scenes of jokes that Keith and I did. And we actually went and we shot them and I cut them together. And I'm like, we're taking way too long to get to the woods. I get that the comedy can be fun and it can be silly, but we really got to get to the meat and potatoes of this movie. So I ended up just thinking about it. And I'm like, well, what if I just like sort of symbolize that they're talking about their youth and like reminiscing. And so I grabbed actual footage from some of those movies that we filmed when we were kids and I put it in there. And then I actually put a little bit at the end as well.
It's really cool. And Daniel, I want to bring up like the evolution of filmmaking since like when you guys started with, that big old camera of Keith's parents to these things, these cameras, people making stuff on iPhones and such. I mean, the speed in which the technology has just been really kind of like just over the years, like if you're just using your timeline of you two and your friendship, I mean, it's just been kind of incredible. But with that also comes kind of like almost kind of like a debate where just because you have the technology doesn't necessarily make you a filmmaker. What do you think makes a person a filmmaker? Is that they can film? Is it more than that? Does filmmaking start with story? Does it start with the technology? Where does it all kind of come together for you guys, you think?
Man, yeah, I think it has to be a mixture of all of it. I think it has to be, the technology is there, but I think the storytelling really is what we found. And we came up when YouTube was just blossoming and nobody knew what it was. And we tried our hand at that too. And we did like some comedy stuff, some sketches and routines. And, some of it landed and some of it didn't, but the feature filmmaking was a whole different beast. And I think really for us, what we found was, that storytelling, finding our voice and finding, something we wanted to tell and then capturing it on film. I think one kind of informs the other. And Josh has definitely, he started, or he went to college for animation. So he started to have this eye for the moving image and how to express story through imagery. But I think once we got better at writing and once we found stories we wanted to tell, that was really the secret sauce for us.
And Josh, is really interesting that when it comes to, I think the first step of anything is to just do it, isn't it? Just put that first step in the deep end and just go into it. Because I know with myself, when I do like my reviews and my video reviews, I kind of overthink it. I kind of over prepare. Mm-hmm. And I think over preparation can be the death of creativity. Because a lot of times what you need to do is just do it. And from that comes, good things. Because I imagine the first phase of what you did with Greywood's plot, that was just you just saying, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to go in the deep end. We're going to shoot. Let's see what it's like. And it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be a start. And I think at the end of the day, the start is what you really need to get to the finish line, isn't it?
100%. And the start is the hardest part, but it also will actually tell you if you want to do it. That's like one of the big things I always say. I'm like, just start. And the reason why you should just start is because you'll find out real quick if you actually care about it once you start doing it. Because I mean, but between the two movies, we've made two features over 4 years. And between the two features, I've sunk more hours into them than anything else in my life. And I've sort of it's proof to me that I love to do it, because I still love to do it. I'm editing another movie right now, and the fact that I can keep going at it is that proof. But it was starting. It was that first day when it was like 3 days before my 31st birthday, a day before Dan and Strauss and Keith showed up, and I went to the woods by myself and went into that cabin and walked through the woods at night by myself and just was filming B-roll, going like, I could get eaten by a bear out here. There's tons of bears in Minnesota right now. It's overpopulated. I'm like, I'm so into this that I can't wait till they arrive. I have to go film. And I stayed up till like 10:30 filming, went to bed. I mean, I had a few drinks, then went to bed, and then got up and woke up, and there was like a fog over the field. It's a shot that's in the movie where you could see the birdhouse and there's like a fog behind it. I woke up and shot that and was like, it's 5:30 in the morning, and I'm so excited to do this that I'm up filming right now. I don't even want to sleep anymore. I want to be filming. And that excitement, it has its ebbs and flows, but I really think that was that starting was the proof. Like, I love this, and I want to make this. I want to make movies.
So for everyone out there listening, September 16, Greywood's Plot. I really recommend people check this film out, because I love when I get, like, lately I've been getting some films sent to me that have been like a real surprise, because I get so many films sent to me, especially kind of horror features. I like to be surprised. I like to watch something that's different. I like to watch something that's innovative and creative. And that's really a lot of the stuff that you guys really hit that with your movie.
Awesome.
So congratulations to you guys. Best of luck with the release. And when your next feature, I think you're doing, is it Scumbag is what you're
Scumbag is one that I filmed during the pandemic, and because I couldn't film with anyone, I used that as the excuse to like make a movie, be a real rebel without a crew, no crew, right. Just me. And so I'm in the process. It's been a long process of editing and a move from Minnesota to Atlanta and a lot of other stuff, but I'm in the process of finishing that one up right now. And I'm really excited to get something really weird out there. And then Dan and I I just finished the first draft of another feature, tentatively titled Band-Aid Face, and Daniel is grabbing that one and working on the second draft in our sort of process of writing back and forth. So I'm excited to see what he does with it.
Well, until then, Greywood's Plot, September 16 on digital. Everyone do check it out. Josh and Daniel, I thank you both very much for your time today. Best of luck with the film's release, and hopefully we begin soon.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having us, man.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content. Also, if you would like to request a review and support my work, please join my Patreon via the link in the description below.